Live with CDP Sports Talk, a weekly sports and entertainment podcast sponsored by Barry Cullen Chevrolet. Live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and LinkedIn. And on audio via Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, Anchor FM, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Radio Public, and TuneIn. Now, here's your host, Chris Palme.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Season 8, Episode 30, overall 415 of Live with CDP Sports and Entertainment Talk Show, sponsored by Barry Cullen Chevrolet Dealership at 905 Woodlawn Road West in the Guelph Auto Mall. BarryCullen.com for the newest selection of new and pre-owned GM vehicles, or give them a call at 519-824-0210. Or email the dealership at info@barrycullen.com. As always, Live with CDP Sports and Entertainment Talk Show is on weeknights from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern on radio station WQEE 99.1 FM in Noonan, Georgia, just outside of Atlanta, the home of Southern Talk and Sports. I hope everyone's doing well on this, I can't believe it's already Tuesday, July 16th, 2024. It's been rainy here in Southern Ontario since last week, but the sun's finally out, the humidity's back, and I hope everyone's doing well on this Tuesday, July 16th, 2024. I want to apologize to my Twitter X viewers. I just found out last night that I can't live stream on Twitter X unless I had a premium blue check account. So this morning I took the steps to get myself a premium plan, a blue check plan with Twitter X. So hopefully the next time I air my show, it will be back on Twitter X live stream again as well. But everybody can still watch this live stream today on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, and Instagram, and again, hopefully again soon with Twitter/X. I'm excited about my guest today. This is her very first time on Live with CDP Sports and Entertainment Talk Show. I met her through X, Twitter, ironically, and my guest's name today is Robyn Mundy. She's the editor-in-chief for the BuffaloFanbase.com, a widely read Buffalo Bills fan blog, and host of her own podcast show, Tea Time with Robyn. And Robyn is a native of Western New York and a lifelong Buffalo Bills fan, and I'm excited to have her on here today, and we're going to talk about the 2024 Buffalo Bills, whether this team is still a contender in the AFC, and a little bit about Steph Diggs, 4 years in Buffalo, and we're just talking about the Bills and a little bit about her background as well. Good afternoon, Robyn. How you doing?
Great. And I want to thank you for inviting me to be on your show. This is exciting. And excuse me, have to give a shout out to our friend Robbie Snyder. And hi, Robbie, wherever you are, if you're listening, I'm so proud of you and all the good work you're doing with your podcast.
Absolutely. And I want to say hi to Robbie and Nick, my co-host, and myself were on his show a week ago as well. And Robyn, for those people that wanted to watch us on Twitter X, I just found out last night that you have to have a premium account now to live stream. And so unfortunately, I won't be able to air this live on Twitter X today, but I will make sure the audio and video on YouTube will be on there after.
Great. Sounds like a plan. Let's talk Bills.
You must be exciting. The rookie training camp starts up today for the Buffalo Bills. Mm-hmm. The regular training camp, July 24th. And before we get into training camp, there was some early morning news about the Buffalo Bills. Robyn, if you'd like to share it with our audience.
Oh, this is so near and dear to my heart. And we spoke just a moment ago about this, but congratulations to Chris Brown, the next voice of the Bills. This is just so exciting. Chris is one of us. His history, he goes back so far. And I was hoping through the whole off season, I was crossing my fingers and hoping that they would make him the permanent voice of the Bills because he speaks from our heart. So congratulations to Chris Brown.
Yeah, because I had Sal Capaccio on last weekend. He couldn't say anything, but it just made sense because Chris has been doing it for the last year and a half, and Eric's been there for a while, and Sal does a good job, and they have good chemistry together, and I think
Dude.
that's and to me, I still like the radio broadcast, and being an Eagles fan, I'm spoiled with Merle Reese, who's been the
Right.
voice of the Eagles since '76, but Buffalo's had Van Miller, John Murphy, and now Chris Brown.
It's a legacy that is incomparable in terms of other areas. And I'm just so happy for Chris because I've met him once at training camp. He is a very special person. And indeed, not just the voice of the Bills now, but also a great representative for our community. And I say our community, even though I've lived in Wyoming for 31 years, my heart will always be in Western New York and Buffalo. So I think it's a great day that we finally have our voice. And it has been so much fun, hasn't it, listening to Chris as the interim, because we've gotten used to his craziness, right? You know, his way, his mannerisms. And that's what's so cool about this, because Van Miller had his own style and John Murphy had his own style. And I'm glad he's going to also be color commentating with Chris and Eric. And so now we have this legacy that I think is very special. And Chris has said that he always, his entire life, wanted to be calling a football game, a National Football League football game. This is like a dream come true for him. And how cool is that?
Absolutely. And thoughts on the time John Murphy was with the Bills? Obviously, he originally was a color analyst with Van in '84, and then when
Right.
Van retired after the '03 season, he took over, and for many years he had to call lean years for the Buffalo Bills. And now the last 5 years, this team has back to winning and making the playoffs and being a contender. And John Murphy, I had on my show 3.5 years ago when I first started, and John gave
Wow.
me some time to come on my show. And very nice man. And when I talked to him about baseball, he opened up because he liked Ernie Harwell, the late
Oh,
broadcaster for the Detroit Tigers,
mhm.
and John opened right up with me, and he told me some stories with him and Van Miller too.
Oh my goodness gracious. I bet they were just gems. There's so much history and respect I have for the broadcasters that we have in Western New York, because we're a sports town. We were just
Absolutely,
talking about that, right? We're a sports
absolutely, absolutely. But I'm going to be biased. I'm going to say right now, the number one team in Buffalo, I think's the Bandits, and I think the
town.
Bills and the Sabres need to pull up. Same with
It's
the
so
Bisons too.
I think I absolutely, when the double championship happened, it's like these guys got swag now. It's time for them to tell the Bills and the Sabres, "Psh, get with it."
But one thing about the Bills I like, they didn't panic during the last couple years where they exited from the playoffs. I think Brandon Beane is a good GM. Sean McDermott is probably been the Bills' best coach since Marv Levy. They have stability. Obviously,
Yes.
winning helps with stability, but it just when you don't switch coaches every couple of years, you know this being a Bills fan, and
Yes.
being an Eagles fan too, switching coaching and that every 2-3 years doesn't always mean you're going to be successful and turn
No,
around.
no, and a culture change. And that's kind of something where for anybody that doesn't know who I am, my background is I was an oncology nurse and I practiced at Roswell Park for a number of years in the 1970s. And then I moved around a bit and ended up in Wyoming for the last 31 years. And I am also I'm retired now, a psychotherapist, working with people that had issues, chronic health issues, and that sort of thing. But the skills that you learn as a therapist are applicable to almost any scenario. And so my focus, as I have written over the years, has been on the mental and the psychological aspects of team and team culture. is something that I think is incredibly important, and it's not talked about enough in terms of what extra little bit you have to get you over the top. And that is what the Bills had been missing, as you pointed out, because of the lack of stability in coaching. Well, now we have a coach. We've had a coach. We now have a general manager. He's a wonderful general manager. The draft that we had this year, I was just writing down the players that are going to hit rookie camp. This draft, I think, in a couple of years is going to prove to be a really good draft.
Absolutely. I was going to get that to you in a little bit, but for some of my audience, being a retired nurse,
Yeah.
oncology nurse, psychotherapist,
Mhm.
can you just explain just a little bit about that?
Well, when I first became a nurse in the middle of the 1970s, I started working at Roswell Park, and Roswell Park is a large oncology hospital, cancer hospital. And now it's changed names actually since I worked there. It's now Roswell Park Comprehensive Cancer Center. And that's what I did for 6 years. And at the same time, I was a student at UB and I finished my degree in nursing at UB. And then I moved and I eventually ended up in Wyoming. And one of the things that we didn't have, I live about 130 miles from anything like you would call a big town. I live kind of out in the middle of nowhere. And so when I moved here, my husband was a ER doctor. And so when we moved to the area we live in north central Wyoming, he was the first ER doctor ever in the whole county. And I took care of the people who were diagnosed with cancer who had at that point no clue what's going on, what your treatment options are, all of that sort of thing was not really made available to them. And so I started my own practice. I hung my own shield right up on the door and said, okay, let's go. And I worked with people who were diagnosed. I worked with people who were severely ill from cancer. And it taught me a lot about human behavior, human nature, families, all of that sort of thing. And I became kind of, um, shall we say, a behavior analyst. And I did a lot of psych evaluations and that sort of thing for the state. And when you live in a place like this, whatever skills you have, the community will say, please help us. And that's what was so kind of unique about what I did. This was in the 1990s when I was doing this, and I was sort of a rogue, if you will, because I stood up for the patients if the doctors were not giving them correct information or all of their treatment options, that sort of thing. I advocated. They call that position now being an advocate. And basically, you're the voice for that person so that they are assured that they're getting proper care. So that's where my skill set came from. But of course, being from Western New York, born and raised, by the way, Springville, New York, go Griffs. Uh, so got to say that, got to have a shout out for Springville, New York. But I never lost my roots, right? I've always been, and you know this, Chris, because you're part of it. We are a different fan base. We are lifers. We bleed, as people say, we bleed for our team. And maybe one thing that your listeners might find funny if they don't know me, I have had my passion for the Bills my whole life. I've taken it wherever I went. When I came to Wyoming 31 years ago, I was the only fan here. I didn't know anybody at all who was a Bills fan, except that they would say, oh, well, yeah, you lost 4 Super Bowls. That's all that they would know about the Bills. And then along comes Josh Allen. Oh, my goodness gracious. It was crazy for me at that point because I had been watching Josh since he was a sophomore at the University of Wyoming. He came in, played a couple of games, And I have to tell you, you just saw that something in him right from the get-go, that he was going to take a team, put him on his back, and go. Because the University of Wyoming, like the University of Buffalo, isn't in a conference like the SEC. Okay. So you don't have a good offensive line in front of you, which is why Josh learned he had to run for his life. He's always been that way, but he was prepared to do that. So I would see this guy and he would mobilize the team, and you could just see the team galvanize around him. He'd go up and down the benches and start shouting at, the defense, let's go. He'd get the team going. And I tried to convey this on social media to my friends, that you should pay attention to this guy, because everybody else was in love with Josh Rosen, right? Everybody wanted Baker Mayfield or Josh Rosen. And Josh Allen was, oh, well, he's not any good because he doesn't have any foot mechanics and he can't throw the ball accurately. But I'm telling you, you could see it when he was in college, when he was at UW. You could see that something in him that was different. And that's what I tried to convey to my friends early on. And they all thought I was nuts. It's like, oh, yeah, well, he's going to be okay. Well, we all know what happened when the Bills drafted him. There was a contingent of Bills fans that were not happy. They were not happy that the Bills drafted Josh Allen. And that made me, it's probably the only time I can honestly say that I was embarrassed to be a Bills fan. I thought the behavior was inappropriate. And that, look at this kid as our quarterback. And then what did he do? He just turned around and went to everybody. So
I wanted to ask you, I wanted to say this too, Robyn. Josh Allen also, when he was at a high school in California, he had trouble getting into a college program. He had a lot of being rejected, being told no, 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 and he never quit. And he finally got an opportunity at Wyoming. He had
998 rejections. He sent out 1,000 letters and was rejected by everybody except the University of Wyoming. It's remarkable.
And he's a story, not just because he's a professional athlete, but because I'm in a new career. A lot of people, you're going to have your successes, but you're also going to be told, no, you can't do this. And obviously his story inspires me because he was told no, and he kept being persistent at it. And he just needed a chance to prove himself. And he had the raw talent, by the way. He had the raw ability. And then the Buffalo Bills have helped develop him into a Pro Bowl quarterback as well. But you never give up. Go ahead.
That's a good point. I'm sorry for interrupting, but that's a very good point, because if he had been drafted by the Jets, I think he would have flamed out like Zach Wilson. I do. I feel, Zach Wilson is still a quarterback that I think the story hasn't been finished on him yet. But the Jets have a way of destroying quarterbacks. And I don't know what's going to happen with them and Aaron Rodgers, and I don't really care that much. But I will say that you're absolutely right. Josh Allen, if he had been on any other team, may not have turned out to be the quarterback that he is.
And also, too, I was going to bring this up later, but he took his bumps and stuff. But I'm still old school. Back in the old days, a young quarterback would be drafted, but the veteran would always play. And now the NFL is like, okay, we're going to draft you in the first round or second round. You're going to play. And sometimes it takes young quarterbacks a little bit of time. And I still believe I'm not saying sit them on the bench for the whole year, but I do like the way the Bills approached it with Josh Allen. And the Eagles did that with Jalen Hurts too. His first year, he was sitting behind Carson Wentz. And going from college to the NFL, or even the Canadian Football League, pro football, there's a huge jump because of the speed of the game. You know this, Robyn, and the size of the guys. It's a lot to take on when you're a young quarterback.
Well, and let's remember that Josh Allen, the plan was for him to sit, but Nathan Peterman kind of put the nix on that, didn't he? And Josh and that says something about Josh too, doesn't it? He got thrown in. And he was interviewed. I remember an interview that he had shortly after that first rookie season was over. And somebody asked him about that. How was it for you? How was it for you having to jump in way before anybody wanted to see you on the field? And he honestly admitted his first start, he came into that Ravens game, but his first start was against the Chargers, and they absolutely destroyed him. And he admitted that he was looking at these defenses, he had no clue. He said, I was just out there, winging it. But how many quarterbacks, how many guys could do that, right? Like get thrown in. That could have ruined him too. And it didn't.
And the reason why the Bills had their 17-year playoff drought, not just because of the switch in coaches and GMs constantly,
Abuse.
but they couldn't find a quarterback since Doug Flutie left. I was a
Yes.
Flutie fan, and
Me
they went
too.
with Rob Johnson, and they just could never find a quarterback after Doug Flutie. They
Nope.
tried with Trent Edwards. They tried with J.P. Lossman. They tried with Ryan Fitzpatrick, who was loved by Bills Mafia, but he wasn't the answer. And Josh Allen is really their first franchise quarterback, really,
Oh, yeah.
since Jim Kelly. Drew Bledsoe was good. Doug Flutie was good, but really they haven't had an impact franchise quarterback since number 12.
Exactly. And that shows you how important the quarterback position is in football. And I believe it's the same way in Canadian football. Everything kind of
Oh, yes.
revolves around the strength and weaknesses of your quarterback. Yeah, agreed.
Absolutely. And I get a comment here from a viewer. Hey, partner, let's go.
Hey, hey, partner. Speaking of partners, I
Go
have
ahead.
to I have to give a shout out because the podcast that I do, which we're starting up again on July 18th, 2 days from now, is called Tea Time with Robyn. And Tiffany Estell is my sister. She is the one who organizes everything and makes it run the way that it does. So Tea Time with Robyn, you can find our podcast anywhere you get your podcasts. But I deeply appreciate her because she cuts to the chase. If you ever check out one of our podcasts, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about because T tells it like it is. And I appreciate that about her. So shout out to my partner. Hey, T.
And I have a co-host for a podcast show I do for the CFL Toronto Argonauts. And I tell Nick, I said, Nick, we do it weekly. And I said, Nick, we're not always going to agree on things. And I said, that's good because I said, I'm 52, he's 27. I said, I'm the older Argonauts type fan and he's a younger generation fan. And I said, it's okay to have different opinions.
Yes.
As long as it doesn't get out of hand, I think it's good to not always agree. And it makes for good conversation as well.
Yes, it does. And people should be able to talk. And it's what I think we're missing in society a lot now is being able to converse respectfully and understand that just because somebody doesn't feel the same way you do, that doesn't mean that you need to shout at them or make them feel less than you are. And it's something that I think is important in podcasting, in what you're doing in terms of connecting with people and talking about things in a positive way.
Never belittle your guests if you don't agree with their views. And
Right.
and the thing with my show, Robyn, if you've watched any of them,
I have.
I let my guests have their opinions and views, even if I don't necessarily agree with them. I want them to feel comfortable to come on here, and that's why I've been lucky to have so many great guests. Can you just tell us how you started up your own podcast show, Tea Time with Robyn? Obviously, you must be a golfer with that name, Tea Time. And
No, because T
oh,
is
oh,
it's short for Estelle. Tiffany Estell. Her nickname is T, and TEE. But yeah, I've told her that. It's like, oh gosh, we should be a golf podcast, shouldn't we? But no. And it's kind of interesting. I got to go back a step because in the early podcast days, and this was a few years back, Danielle, I won't say her last name because she doesn't like to have her name out in the stratosphere of social media. And I did a podcast for Buffalo Rumblings called The Mafia Mavens. And we were the only women podcasters at that time. And it was so much fun. We had just a blast. And, podcasts come and go. we lost track of our podcast, unfortunately. And we actually had, I was tickled because we had people that said, I listen to you. I was like, you do? It was so much fun. But the Mafia Mavens was great, and Danielle was great. So she was the first one to kind of get me on board with this. But I have to say, and you'll appreciate this because of the way you've grown yourself as a professional. I first started podcasting because I have always been uncomfortable with public speaking as a
Me
professional
here.
person. Same?
When I was in elementary school, high school, I hid from public speaking. I absolutely
Yeah.
hated it. And now that I'm 52, I do public speaking for high schools here, and I'm so much more comfortable being in front
Yeah,
of a camera or in front of people now than I was when I was younger. I can relate totally.
exactly. And so my goal in life as a retired person was look at, just because you're retired doesn't mean that you just stop living. And my passion has always been the Bills. And so I was writing for the blog. And when Ryan Talbot, shout out to Ryan Talbot from Syracuse.com, he retired from the position as editor-in-chief of the blog. And then Del Reed from 26 Shirts, who supports our blog, by the way, he asked me if I wanted to be the editor-in-chief. And I can't even remember. I think this was probably 7 or 8 years ago now. And I just, took off with the blog, and here we go. I have been so blessed along the way, like you, right? You meet people who understand your passion, right? And they support you in what you want to do. And so I kind of did I'm going to do this now, even though I'm an old person, I'm not done growing. And one of the things I always wanted to be able to do is to speak publicly and be comfortable, because it's something, I'm such a different person. I'm very introverted. And so when I did my psychotherapy work, I'm in an office and I'm in a controlled setting, and I'm pretty much doing one-on-one or with a small group. I was never used to, and I got asked to present at state conferences and conferences, national conferences, all that kind of stuff. And it was hard for me because I always felt, woo, so uncomfortable. And now doing these podcasts, thankfully, especially to Tiffany, she said, you can do this, Robyn, you can really do this. And she said not long ago, it was funny. She goes, I listened to one of your first podcasts and it was terrible. We just laughed. We had such a good laugh about it. But I think you know what I'm talking about, because you have done 400 plus shows. Holy cow. That's amazing.
Yeah, and if you look at my early shows from YouTube from 2 years ago, 3 years, 4 years ago, I think I've improved. But one thing, Robyn, about this industry, podcasting, radio, media work, never get complacent. So I'm always looking to try to improve and get better every single day.
And you are. And that's the cool thing about what you do. There's so many, you have such a variety of guests. Like you said, you have guests from all walks of life. And in the media, yes, but other kinds of guests as well. And I think that's what makes a show very interesting, when you have different points of view from people from different backgrounds.
Absolutely. And I just like some of these talk shows that are on the radio where they're sports, but they can talk about other things as well. And
Mhm.
I just think it's important to be diverse and to wear as
Yeah,
many hats as you can. And one thing I've learned too, you are going to make mistakes. I've
for
made
real.
mistakes as a camera operator doing this, but you know what? You learn from it. Nobody's perfect. And if you don't make mistakes, well, you're not really learning. And
That's right. That's right. And
that's
I
where
don't think
that's why that's why
oh,
the athletes. No, go ahead.
there's a little,
No,
I
go ahead,
want to
Robyn.
tell everybody there's a little delay, and it's Robyn Mundy's fault because I have a Wyoming Wi-Fi connection. So I apologize in advance for that. But yes, you can't stop learning. And I'll be 69 years old in a couple of weeks. And I think about this now, and it's like, I don't want to stop learning. I don't want to stop growing as a person. And I'm at the point now when you get to be around this age, I want to give back because so many people helped me along the way. So many. Oh, that's my partner right there. I see her.
And then I've tried to learn that too, to get engagement from
Yes.
my audience. So people that are watching this live stream in audio, I want them to participate as well. And I wanted to ask you about your podcast too. Um,
Mhm.
is it a video podcast like mine, or is it strictly audio?
No, it's video, and we drop on Thursdays usually, and T can tell you all about that. We go almost every week during the season, every week. And then when the off season came, we went to every other week. And then the last few weeks, we've kind of taken off because, as you know, there's not a whole lot to talk about during this time of year. And quite frankly, I need a break. And I know my partner does too, having to put up with me. But if you do a podcast every week, like you're doing 3 podcasts, as I understand it.
At one point, I was doing 5 a week.
Holy moly. Chris, how did you do that?
And I was working midnights on my other job, and it was really difficult.
Whoa.
But you know what? I learned from one guy too. It's not always quantity, it's quality. So
Yes.
I've kind of cut back to about 3 a week, sometimes 4, but 3. And
Mm,
it's
good.
sometimes people on social media, you know this, they quantity, but to me, quality is just as important as quantity, if not more. And one thing I love about this show, and I'm sure you do as well, I wear all the hats. I'm the producer, I'm the promoter, I'm the on air stuff. So it's good for me to do all this, because the more hats you can wear doesn't mean you have to be the best at everything. Means you're more valuable to a radio station at some point as well. And you can do radio from your own home like I am now. My show
Mhm.
is done remotely from my home in Southern Ontario near Toronto, and it airs every night on WQEE 99.1 FM in Noonan, Georgia.
99. Okay, I wrote it down because I'm going to be checking it out.
It's not a big station, but it's a
Mhm.
start. I got my foot in this door, and I've
That's
been
all
with
it
them
takes.
for a year and a half. Yes.
That's all it takes. And you have the determination to succeed at this, and you just keep working. That's my philosophy. And on our podcast, we often talk about this. And I don't mean to say this in kind of a weird way, but we don't really care about numbers. What we care about is sitting down and having a good discussion.
Exactly. And I've had professional broadcasters from teams tell me that too many people on social media focus on numbers. Just concentrate on having good shows and good guests, and eventually somebody will recognize your work. And Robyn, that was well said. And also, Robyn, people think just because you do a podcast or a radio show from your home, it's easy. Just tell our audience it is a lot of work behind the scenes that people don't know.
Ooh, and I have to take my hat off again to my partner because Tiffany does most of the heavy lifting in terms of the technical aspect. Every Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Thank you, T. I know she's checking me out. I'm going to hear about this from her after the show. I know, T. Gotcha. But you're absolutely right. There's so much to podcasting behind the scenes, and you have to have the structure in place. And I applaud you, Chris, because that's what you have to do in terms of, if you want to do it and do it right, you want to do it yourself, you want to produce it yourself. I agree.
Absolutely. And absolutely. And also too, when I first started out 4.5 years ago, I scripted everything. It was all written down, everything. And a couple guys, one Eric Smith from the Toronto Raptors, Chuck Swirsky from the Chicago Bulls, they came on my points or maybe some questions or whatever. But talk to your guests like you're at a sporting event or a coffee shop. And I've learned now in my 4.5 years how to ad lib. And sometimes questions I prepare don't need them, because when you're listening, by the way, you know this too, well, Robyn and Tiffany, listening is just as important as talking, because sometimes you can ask your guests a question and they can give you the answers to 4 or 5, 6 questions down the line.
Yep. Absolutely. And listening, I believe you're right, is the most important quality in terms of being able to communicate to your audience by allowing and facilitating your guest to be the best that they can be. And that's what T does so well with me, because she can get me focused. And sometimes that's, with guests, sometimes you go off track or whatever. But if you're listening, you can figure out the thread that they're talking about, and you try to help facilitate that. This is very much like, I want to say, group therapy. And I've done a lot of group therapy over the years with people with cancer. And I had a chronic pain support group that I did for a while. And I worked on the Native American Crow Reservation. I worked in the Navajo Reservation. And the most important skill I found to have was to be able to listen. So you're absolutely right. And I don't see a whole lot of difference. Sometimes I think what we do is almost the same thing as what therapists do. We listen and facilitate.
Absolutely. And I had some other questions I was going to ask you, and we've
Yeah.
already answered them. So I'm not going to re ask you questions that we've already talked about. And the word I'm looking for, Robyn, and this goes for Tiffany and other podcasters out there, is sometimes the ablet. Just sometimes you don't need to go on a script. You can just talk and think on your feet. And that's why I love my live interviews. I do a lot of live interviews with the Bisons or Bandits at the games, and I get to interview
That must be
coaches and
fun.
players on the field, and you have to think on it's fun, and you have to think on your feet. You can't just like have stuff written down. You have to like really listen, and I think that's helped my listening skills as well. But to me, listening is just as important as talking on any radio and podcast show.
1,000%. 1,000%.
How long have you and Tiffany been doing your podcast Tea Time with Robyn, and what do you enjoy the most about your show?
Well, this is interesting. What I enjoy most about the show is my partner. She's the most wonderful person. I I could get teary here, but she encouraged me. She contacted me and said, "Would you like to do a podcast?" And I was like, "Wow," because she's very comfortable in that arena, and I appreciate her so much. And and I think you probably know what I'm talking about in terms of when you get to know people that way, they become family. And that's what I feel like about her. She's my family. And this is what we do. This is what I think makes our fan base so unique, is that we really, when they talk about the term Bill's Mafia, family, that's what we are. And it's not like any other fan base. I've been to other stadiums around the country over the years. I've met lifelong fans from other teams, and they envy us. We really are kind of the envy of the fan bases around the league, because we are different. And everybody knows it. And everybody knows we have a chip on our shoulder. We're tired of being mocked. We're tired of being, the loser teams. And we stick by our team through thick and thin. The stuff, 4 Super Bowl losses in a row. If that didn't destroy you as a fan, I don't know what could.
And the Bandits had a few losses in a row in the championship
Yes,
series too. They lost 3 times in a row, but their fans stuck behind them. And you're right, you nailed it. Buffalo fans, win or lose, even the Sabres, the last 13 years, they stick behind them, and it's a great sports town. And Buffalo, Bud Bailey, I don't know if it was Bud Bailey or somebody else. Buffalo's a big city, but it feels like a small town.
it is. Very much so. And I've lived in a few cities in my lifetime, and Buffalo will always be home to me. And it's weird how my life is kind of divided, because I've lived actually more years in Wyoming than I did growing up in Western New York now, but I have never felt disconnected. I always, no matter where I was, had to find out what the Sabres were doing, had to find out what the Bills were doing. And this was in the days before we had the internet. So communicating and finding out in New Mexico what was going on with the Bills was really hard. And shout out to Chris Brown. I was one of the first subscribers because my dad bought me a subscription to the Shout magazine that used to come in the mail a week late, all the way to Wyoming. It was a week late, and I loved it. I would just tear into that thing, and it was like whatever information I could possibly get. And look at us now, Chris. You can find, if you want to talk to a Bills fan, you can talk to a Bills fan anywhere, any place, all the time. It's a wonderful world we live in.
Well, look at me. I just live outside of Toronto. You're in Wyoming.
Yes.
You're probably about 2,500, 3,000 miles away from me. And with this technology, it's amazing. And I've had guests on from 7 different countries.
Holy
and this
cow.
technology, everybody complains about the negative sides of this technology, but if you use it the right way, it's a great tool.
It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. If we had this tool when I first became a nurse back in the 70s, the things that you could do teaching and the ability to be able to communicate with patients in this realm is so completely different than when I first became a nurse. I just can't even believe what a difference the communication has made. But at the same time, you're right. There's a downside, for sure, there is. But if we focus on the good things that we can use this technology for, just like what you're doing, bringing people together, talking about something that we love, it's amazing. It's amazing.
And also, too, mindset. And it's like
Yes.
with professional athletes, too. These guys have all the talent and skills, Robyn, but mindset. If you don't believe in yourself and believe in your work, you're not going to succeed. So it all starts with you. Don't worry about other people. Just worry about yourself and just focus on and trying to improve and learn daily. And also take feedback. I've had some feedback where, hey, Chris, you could do this better or try this. And I always try to take feedback constructively and try to learn from it as well.
I think that's the most important thing. We learn more, at least I do. I've learned more from my failures in life than I have anything I've succeeded at, to be honest with you. And it's because when you fail or when you don't achieve what it is that you want to achieve, or somebody criticizes you, you have the opportunity to do one of two things. Just what you said, you can take it and run with it and learn from it, or you can let it tear you down. And the very best thing that you can do is stay focused and not let yourself get off track, because it's so easy for other people to knock you off track. And our goal, at least my goal in life, is to try to stay on track as much as I can, because we live in a world where it's very easy to get off track. We live in a world that's very negative at times, divisive.
Absolutely. And by the way, the word failure, I never
I love
use.
that.
I call it setback. That's how I do it. And that's what I tell the guys I interview when they lose a ball game. I said, I don't look at it as a failure. I say it's a learning setback. It's a setback. It's a temporary setback, and you learn and move on from it.
Absolutely. And the more you focus in that direction, as you go through life, when you get to the end of the road, you will look back and realize that you learned so much from those failures or those opportunities, those challenges. I like to call them challenges because that's what they really are, is challenges. Somebody's challenging you to do something differently. Somebody's challenging the thought that you had, and you learn how to navigate that. And through that wisdom, as hopefully as you go on, you start to see that, you know what, I learn more from the mistakes that I made. And it's something that I think comes with time, because when you're young, you think you know everything. And, that's not, I'm not saying that pointing fingers at any generation, because that's every generation. We all thought we knew everything when we were young. And I now realize, looking back, I'm like, oh my gosh, I knew nothing. Life life will allow you those opportunities, but you have to take them. Just like you said, Chris, you have to be the one that says, you know what? I'm not going to let this defeat me. That's not where I'm at. I'm going to learn about it and I'm going to get better. That's
Sean
awesome.
Mc, and Sean McDermott has a quote he says to his team too: "Stay humble, stay hungry, and no matter how successful you get in life, whatever you're doing, and that goes for me in podcasting and radio and media work, just stay humble and stay hungry to continue to learn and improve, and don't let success get to your head."
Bingo. Wow, that was well said.
And Sean McDermott, I've never met him, but that quote
Yeah.
just really hits me right there. And I've seen that too, where people get a little success and then they change. And I want to be the same person now than I am in a couple years from now. And I want all my guests when they come on here to feel comfortable and to be able to trust me and to be able to express their opinions and views on here.
That is awesome. And you do. And I can say straight up, I feel very comfortable talking with you. And it's great because you make people feel so much at ease. I don't feel nervous. I don't feel like, oh, I got to have, all this. We're just having a conversation. It's awesome.
I have to admit, when I first had Sal Capaccio or John Murphy on my show a couple years ago, or John Gerkler, I was kind of a little intimidated. But
Oh,
then
for
when
sure.
I started talking to them, it wasn't me being the fan anymore. It was them treating me like a professional broadcaster, and I just completely relaxed and felt more comfortable with him. Getting his phone number, and I'm at, like last year, and I'm like, wow, this guy's a established professional broadcaster in the NFL, and he trusts me enough to give me his number if I need to call him or reach out to him.
That is just so awesome. And again, to me, that reflects on the community that we have as broadcasters and fans. There's a really goodness about our fan base, and for all the table breaking and the negative stuff that's there, our fan base is like no other, and our media professionals are like no other. You don't go to you go to New York City, you get eaten by the media there. Go to Philly,
They're
you get
tough. They're tough. But I've had some Philly guys come on my show,
oh
and
my
yeah,
gosh.
like Tom McCarthy, the voice of the Phillies, Jim
Yeah.
Jackson of the Flyers. I've even had the Philly Fanatic, the guy that plays the Philly Fanatic,
Oh, yeah.
come on my show. So I
Oh,
reach out to people. I tell this to any podcast or radio. When you reach out for guests, sometimes you're going to get told no, or you're going to be rejected, but you're going to get a lot of yeses. And I tell people, no matter what happens, yes or no, you don't let it stop you from reaching out to people. And so a lot of guests I
that's
thought would
awesome.
never come on my show would come on, and I've been very lucky and fortunate.
You have had some incredible guests, and you have mentors who are very happy to help you grow as a professional. And that I think is so cool, because that to me is the element of professionalism, right? You set aside your own feelings and you help that person, and you feel good because you've helped that person, and you give back. And that's where I'm at in my life right now too. It's like I've had all this stuff put into my head over the years. Um, some of it is professional in terms of working as a nurse or working as a therapist. But as my husband said, you're never going to be remembered for anything you wrote as an oncology nurse. You're always going to be remembered for what you did with the Buffalo Bills. But that's the truth, though, right? We reach out and we give back through what transferable skills, if you want to have the term for it. We learn these skills, and then we share that wisdom. And that's what the media professionals have done for you. And I think that's just a testimony to them. That's just an awful lot of professionalism right there.
And the word I wanted to use with you too, Robin, is pay it forward. And that's what I want to do to
Yes.
others.
Yes, absolutely. And when you get to be old, you really feel the need to do that. It's like I feel that need now. If somebody, if somebody comes to me and wants to talk to me about something, I'm there. right? Like I want to give back all that wisdom that I accumulated before I'm gone, because when I'm gone, it's gone.
And I want to be remembered when my time's up is somebody that liked helping other people and
Yes.
paying it forward. Being kindness does not cost you a cent.
And don't we need that that met really on social media? Because I think that that's something that's lacking, and I don't know, sometimes I think about it, it's like, what can we do about this? But the lack of kindness is troublesome, and it's one of the things that I think presents the biggest challenge in social media, is to get people off that negativity and divisiveness and focus on the kindness and the good things this social media can do for us. Because unless you lived like older people like we are, and I'm going to put you in that category, we lived before the days of the internet, and we lived our lives as adults functioning without the internet. And so we have a very different perspective. When people call us non-digital natives, okay, I'm a non-digital native. I admit I couldn't produce a podcast like you do, because it would, the technology part of it, I'm not wired that way. So as we go on, things change. And the kindness part of it, if you just give back, just like you're saying, Chris, if we can just help each other, you reverberate that positivity. It reverberates. And that's what you do. And that's what I hope I do, is reverberate the positivity and help us get to be back to a more civilized society.
Absolutely. And one thing with my show, Robin, and I've been doing this for 4.5 years now, I keep politics, religion, stuff like that off my shelves. I respect people's, but I don't want any of it on my social media pages. And when my guests come on here, I want to hear about their story and their experiences. It's none of my business what their political views are. I just kind of stay away from those subjects because I find that causes a lot of trouble on social media too.
It does, and it's unfortunate because, as you pointed out earlier in the show, it would be really nice if we could have civil discourse. But unfortunately, social media hasn't found a way to find that balance yet, where we push away the negativity, the hostility, the anger, all of that. It doesn't really have any place for social media. If we were a more civilized society, we would have the ability to do that, but we're not. And at times I worry about where we're headed. And I'm like you, on our podcast, we don't talk about that. And you asked a question before that I want to answer. T and I are going to be starting our third season together, which I can hardly believe that we've been doing this for 3 years, but here we are. And
Congratulations.
thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate that more than you know, because you know the struggle. You know what you've gone through to have 400 shows plus is just amazing.
Passion. And anything you do in life, no matter what it is, it doesn't have to be media work, but you need to find your passion. And for me, it took 47.5 years to find my passion, and it's never too late. I want to prove to people that age is just a number. Don't judge someone based on their age.
Bingo. Bingo, bingo. And I wish you nothing but the best. And I hope that we can be together on podcasts in the future.
Yes, and I would love to have you back as a guest in the future, and maybe Tiffany as well. I'll have you both on
Yes,
my
she
show.
would love it. She would love it.
And even though I'm an Eagles fan, I like to try to cover every team in the National Football League and get their perspective from their city, their media, and their team. And when you get a media side to things, when you're a fan, I hate this team, I hate this team. But when you're doing media work, I've learned to like, wow, you start to see more than just the team itself. You get
Yes.
to know the people behind the scenes, and everybody in the league wants to see you succeed. And
Yes.
that's what's happening with me on my show.
I think that's just so awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you. And same to you, Robin. Do you have a couple more quick questions?
Mhm.
Do you? Okay. we got another comment, and I think it's from Tiffany. I would
would
love it.
love it.
Okay, well,
Get her on because she's the bomb. That's my girl.
all right. Yeah. Deal. And you guys know this too. Booking guests can be a full-time job itself. And sometimes guests no show or have to cancel for whatever reason. So I always tell people with guests, always have a plan B, C, and D just in case.
Wise. That's very wise. Yeah. The podcast world is a little different.
And I have to admit too, a lot of my first shows were solo shows, which helped me as well because I think I built my confidence doing my solo shows,
I
and then when
bet.
my guests come on, it really does help. It's that's what I would tell anybody that's watching or listening right now. You start a podcast, it's try it doing solo shows first, and then go to the guests because I think you learn more about yourself when you do the solo shows.
I can't imagine. That would be such a challenge for me. I'm thinking about what you're saying now. Now you probably said something that T heard, and she's going to make me do this, but I I don't know that I could do that. I really think it would take me a while before I would feel comfortable enough just talking to myself.
Be
But that's just
yourself. Be yourself.
gotcha. Gotcha. Whew. Well, I'll try it sometime. I know T has been after me to be the host because she's the host. And she said, you can do this. And I'm like, but you're right. You're right. I can see where doing a show by yourself would give you a lot of confidence.
And sometimes when a guest cancels out on you at the last minute, you don't have time to book another guest. So the show's got to go on. So I've learned how to, what's the word in football? Quarterbacks. They are
Adjust.
audible. No, they
Audible.
audible.
Yes.
Audible. So
Yeah.
that's what I look at the show as like it being a quarterback. Sometimes you have to learn to call an audible and change things up because the show has to go on. Just like in football, if one play doesn't work, you've got to call an audible.
Yes, absolutely. And in thinking spontaneously, being able to put things in your mind together quickly and adjust on the fly, like you said, because sometimes your guests start talking about something and you go off script, but you
Yep.
still have to ride with it. And you learn
Yep.
to become comfortable with that and helping that person facilitate whatever it is that they want to say. Yeah, that's a skill, isn't it?
That's something I've learned. And Tiffany's got another comment. Yes, she's doing the intro and hosts from now
No
on.
way. No, I can't do it. She's going to torment me about this. I just know it.
And what I love about my media work and doing these shows is I connect with people, but I've also made friendships, and
Yes.
we've not known each other a long time, maybe a couple weeks, but it feels like I've known you for years. Same with Robbie
And
Schneider. Just
Robbie is my friend. Robbie
getting to
is
know
such a
Robbie and
wonderful
talk to him.
guy.
Definitely. Hey, before we wrap up the show in a couple minutes, I wanted to ask you this question because to me, you're going to be one of my Bills insiders going forward. Um,
Yay.
What's your overall assessment of wide receiver Stephon Diggs' 4 years in Buffalo and your thoughts on the trade to the Houston Texans? And as a therapist and psychotherapist, why did it not work out for him going forward with the Bills? If you don't mind me asking you that
Oh,
question.
that's a great question. And I love it because I think it is all about the intangibles. Something, and we may never know, in my opinion, something broke down in Stefan's relationship with Josh. And again, we may never know what transpired, but we all witnessed Stefan yelling at Josh on the sidelines a couple of times when he was frustrated with Josh. And I think that that relationship soured. And okay, let's go back a little bit in history and look at Stefan's pattern. Stefan had the same issues when he played with the Vikings. And so what you see is this love relationship early on and everything's wonderful. And then for whatever reason, things change. And I was talking with my podcast partner T about this off the air one time. There there seems to have been a breakdown in their relationship, and in my opinion, if you have that breakdown in your relationship between your number one wide receiver and the quarterback, you have a problem. And that can become a bigger problem. And then it goes into the locker room. And then people start taking sides. And then you have all this other stuff going on. And for whatever reason, it soured with Stefan. And once that happened, it was never the same. That's my opinion.
And if he didn't want to be there anymore, there's no point. Why? This doesn't just go for football. It's with companies too. If you're in a company where they don't want you or you don't want to be there, then it's time to move on. And in this case, as great as a receiver he is, it's about the team.
It
And
is.
and no one what not one player should ever be bigger than the team. So
Exactly.
I agree with the move they did with Stefan Diggs. But overall, as a receiver in his 4 years, he's right up there with Andre Reed and Eric
Absolutely.
Moulds and Lee Evans.
And that's the other thing, that sometimes our fan base gets a little too dramatic and emotional, because I don't have any ill will towards Stefan Diggs. What happened happened. But there are some fans who feel like they need to, oh, he's a blah 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 whatever. The bottom line is, he was a professional football player. He played for the Buffalo Bills. He was excellent for several years. And I'm grateful, because he helped our quarterback become an even better quarterback. And so if it was time to move on, it was time to move on. So what? In fact, I will say this, Chris, and I'll go on record on your show saying that I think this wide receiver group that we have now is going to surprise a lot of people. I think they're going to be so much better than people think, because, well, you don't have a number one wide receiver. Well, guess what? We have Dalton Kincaid. Just ask Kansas City if, he's been the number one wide receiver for them. He's a tight end. So the Bills have the same thing going. And at some point, we'll talk about that, because I think this Bills team is set up for success this year. And I'm going to say this, I love the fact that the media is putting them down and writing them off and saying that Josh Allen is over and all that sort of thing, because they play better when they have a chip on their shoulder. Bring it on.
And that leads to this question: just thoughts on some of the offseason roster changes
Mhm.
and some of the 2024 Buffalo draft picks, including wide receiver Keon Coleman. When I talked to Sal Capaccio, he said there's huge expectations on him, and I said, Sal, he's still a rookie coming out of college, but the team, I guess he told me the team is really counting on him. And by the way, Kincaid, him and Sam Laporta of the Lions, I really like these
Yes,
young tight
Laporta
ends.
is a
He's
beast.
really good. But and there's another guy on your team that I really like, Shakir. I really think
Oh,
he's gonna have a really good year in 24. So just thoughts on some of your receivers and Keon Coleman, their number one pick.
Keon Coleman is going to be a big part of the offense. And even if he's a rookie, which is something that traditionally McDermott doesn't like to put a lot of heat on the rookies, I would expect early in the season they will do what they did with Dalton Kincaid, and they're going to bring him along slowly and help him build on success. Although when you look at the way he can catch a ball and the acrobatic way moves that he can make, tell me, you can make all the predictions you want, but it's all going to boil down to what Josh Allen sees on the field. And if Keon Coleman gets himself open, or even if he isn't open, Josh will throw through a donut hole uh, at 50 yards without even blinking. Keon will be there as a threat. Even if he isn't the primary receiver, he's going to be a threat. And go ahead and double Kincaid. Tell me what you're going to do one-on-one with Keon Coleman. I think Keon, once he gets comfortable, and people have to be patient with a rookie. He came from a great division. Yes. The move up for a wide receiver from college to the pros is a big jump. The offense is different than I think what he was used to playing. So let's be patient. Let's ease him in over 4 to 6 games and see what he can do and help build his confidence from there. Now, I will say quickly, this draft, I just absolutely loved this draft. Keon Coleman is just one of the great things that I think we have to look forward to. Cole Bishop from Utah is also a safety who I think will be able to, I'm not saying he's going to be high, Poyer and Hyde, but I think he's smart enough that, again, give him time halfway through the season, he's gonna make his name known. Dwayne Carter from Duke University, a captain for 3 years, a defensive tackle. This guy, I think of him like Harrison Phillips that we had a few years ago. I think he's going to become what they hoped Harrison Phillips would, but his injuries held him back. So, I just got to say this. Ray Davis is one of my favorite draft picks in this draft because he's a running back. I think he's going to shock people because he's going to be the thunder to the lightning that we have in James Cook. And I expect to see a lot of him on the field. Now, here's a guy, you have to pronounce his name, Edifwan Olafosio.
Impressive. That's impressive. You
Did I
did
get
that.
it?
Yes.
Oh, that's amazing. T will laugh because I
Still
usually
working on it. I'm still working on that.
Okay, linebacker. Now, here's the one thing that I'm most concerned about, to be honest with you. My biggest concern, and I'll be watching this in training camp, is what Matt Milano do we have? Because a tibial plateau fracture that he suffered can be a very serious injury for a linebacker, especially somebody that has to move laterally, all that kind of stuff. So are we going to see the same Matt Milano that we saw before? I worry about that. That's going to be one of my big concerns. And then moving down the list, we have Javon Solomon from Troy, a guy that's not from too far away. He's a defensive end, and I think he's going to be right up there in the rotation. And then Tylen Grable, an offensive tackle from Jacksonville State and UCF. These offensive linemen that are being selected, that's Cromer's choice because Aaron Cromer is the best offensive line coach in the NFL. And anybody can argue with me about that all they want, but he knows offensive linemen. And I'm sure he picked this guy. Daquan Hardy is a corner. We all know that the corner position now without Tre'Davious White, we've got a very young backfield, very young. So he's going to get a good look. And then again, Travis Clayton was actually a soccer player from England, and he wants to try to make it as an offensive tackle. And I say, bring him on, because if Cromer thinks he's good enough, that's good enough for me. So that's what I think about the draft picks. And as far as the free agents go, the signings were surgical. They didn't get any big names. I like that. I really like that. Watch out for Mac Hollis, the wide receiver.
Former Eagle.
Yes.
Mac Hollins.
Oh, that's right. He was. Okay, so you know what I'm talking about. This guy has some serious potential. And I agree with you completely about Shakir. He came from Boise State, and that guy does not drop anything.
I'm going to say this, and I know Bill fans will hate it, but he sort of reminds me of a Wes Walker.
Oh, yes. That's excellent.
Wes Walker, he's smart, has high football IQ, good hands, and he runs good routes. And to me, Shakir is underrated on the Bills.
Big time. Big time. And that's what's going to help Keon Coleman, because you're going to have a problem, okay? Because Shakir can catch anything. Dalton Kincaid's in there. And then what are you going to do with Keon? So I think the Bills are well positioned, unlike what a lot of the national media think.
One X factor for the Bills this year, I brought it up with Sal, and me and Sal both agreed. I was surprised, but I said the X factor is Von Miller. If he can be even 80% of what he was, that would be so much help for the
defensive line. I worry more about the defense than the offense right now, because I think our offensive line is pretty well set. The wide receivers, they're going to find their place. The running, James Cook is there. The running game's established. We got Josh Allen, enough said. But the defense, I'm encouraged because we have Bobby Babich Jr. as the defensive coordinator, because I think he is a very good team builder. And it will be interesting to see how much different the defense may or may not look, depending on his own flavor that he puts to it. And the question is Sean McDermott going to call plays, or is he going to let his defensive coordinator do it?
That's interesting as well. So, but this leads to my next question. Robyn, has the Super Bowl opportunity been closed for Josh Allen in 2024 Buffalo Bills?
No. No, and I'll go on record saying this. This team is better positioned than any team that I've seen with Josh Allen since 2020. I do believe, if you're talking about it from like a mental perspective, the drama is gone. Okay. This is now clearly Josh Allen's time in the sun. Contrary to what a lot of people think, I think his window is more open than it has been. And I will add this: when you have stability in your personal life, it makes a tremendous difference in terms of how you focus. And we all know this, because if our life at home isn't working out well, then we're not going to be producing our best. And now that Josh Allen seems to have settled down in his personal life, I think it's going to make a huge difference. I think he's ready. He's finally at that point where he realizes it's now or never. Okay. Now, do I mean that the window's closed if he doesn't win the Super Bowl this year? No, I think his Super Bowl window is just opening.
He's only 27, 28, and
28.
Jim Kelly was 31 years old when he took the Bills to a Super Bowl 25. So, and you know what? Football, you know this, Robyn, football's changed so much. Back in
Yes.
the old days, when you hit 27, 28, okay, you're getting close to the end of your career. Now you can play with the rules to
Yeah,
protect the quarterbacks. You can play until you're 40, or in case of Tom Brady, 45 years.
exactly. I don't expect that Josh will last that long because of the way he plays, but that's Josh. And that's the other thing that I think that finally there's a balance that Josh has reached and the coaches have reached, as far as allowing Josh to be Josh. Because Josh, that is, when you take away that element of his quick decision making, running on the fly, doing what he does, you can't take that away from him. That's the essence of what makes him who he is.
And you have to live with his mistakes too. It's
Yes.
like Brett Favre, he had the gunslinger mentality. A lot of times
Yes.
Favre was successful, but there was times where Favre would get sacked and fumble the ball or throw bad interceptions. So you got to take sometimes the bad with the good.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
in this case with Josh Allen or even Jalen Hurts, there's more good than bad.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But there you have it.
In terms, I wanted to ask you this, Robyn. In terms of all-time great Buffalo Bills quarterbacks, where do you rank Josh Allen up there?
Incomplete, because his tale is yet to be told. But nobody can take the mantle off of Jim Kelly yet. As far as numbers go, as far as arm strength goes, as far as all the tangibles go, I think Josh Allen has proven that he's pretty much right up there with Jim. And if not superseding him in some aspects of his game, but he still has to get to the big one and he's got to win it. That's that's his legacy right now. He's got to win the big one and he knows it. But I think he's better positioned now, being a little older and a little bit more mature, to handle that pressure. Because, I mean, what quarterback has more pressure than Josh Allen to win a Super Bowl?
I would say Jalen Hurts in Philly, because
Oh,
the Eagles last year were 10-1, and a couple years ago
that's right.
they won a Super
That's
Bowl.
fair.
And I would say Allen and Josh Allen. I would say Allen and Hurts. I would
Yep.
say, because Philadelphia, look how fast they discarded Carson Wentz after they won a Super Bowl. They got rid of him. So I would say, I'm being biased here, but I would say Allen and Jalen Hurts
I would agree
are
with
both.
that. I hadn't thought about Jalen Hurts, but that's a good point. I guess I'm thinking of it more from the aspect of never having won a Super Bowl in a franchise in a city that has never won a Super Bowl. And his reason for living at this point, win the Super Bowl for the Buffalo Bills. That's his whole focus. and I believe him. He comes from a wonderful family. I met Josh's parents a couple of times, and they are salt of the earth people. And his dad, I'm telling you, if you want to know where Josh got his personality from, straight out of his father. His dad is a performer. His dad is a teacher. His dad is a mentor. His dad is an incredible human being, and his mom is too. But Josh became Josh because his dad kind of helped mentor him along the way. And it's kind of amazing when you think about it. But we're lucky in Buffalo to have a quarterback who truly, really gets it and knows how important it is to the city. It's not a paycheck for him.
No, and they love their athletes. And Bud Bailey told me this too. A lot of current athletes or former athletes and former coaches love living in Buffalo and Western New York because they love how they're treated and they love the environment in that city, in that
Look at
community.
Lindy Ruff.
Yeah.
Lindy has lived in Buffalo since 1979 and has been all over the NHL. And in the meantime, still has his, he's still zeroed in on Buffalo. So,
And the Sabres just hired him back as a head coach.
yep. And he's going to be amazing. I think that he's the medicine that the Sabres need to pull themselves together. We got a great group of young guys. They just need somebody to kick them in the butt.
Hopefully this is a year because they're at year 13 of a non-playoff drought. And the thing is, if the Sabres ever get back in the playoffs, the KeyBank Center will be crazy.
Yes. Just look how it is with the Bandits.
It's like Buffalo when the Bills finally made the playoffs. Yeah, they love winning, and Buffalo will support their teams no matter what. But winning really helps. Before we wrap this up, I wanted to ask you this because obviously you've probably been to Highmark or Ralph Wilson Stadium in the past. What are your thoughts on the new stadium opening up in 2026? And do you have a favorite game that you attended at the current stadium?
It would be easier for me to, yes, do I have a favorite game? I don't know if I have a favorite game. All the games I go to, I love, but I have the worst game I can tell you that I ever went to. It was the last game that I went to against the Minnesota Vikings. When the Minnesota Vikings came
Ooh,
to town, I was at that game, and oh my God, the back and forth, and they replay it a lot on the NFL Network because it was such a good game, but I won't watch it. I can't watch it. It was too heartbreaking. So yeah, that was the worst game that I ever attended. As far as the new stadium goes, I have a lot of thoughts about that because the stadium that currently exists was Rich Stadium that opened in 1975. And I remember going
70. Yeah,
go ahead.
yeah, I think, yeah. I was going to say 73, I believe, but yes,
Oh,
it's, I
maybe.
think, what, 50,
Maybe
73
it
or
was
75.
whatever. It was in the mid 70s, and I'll tell you, it was quite a big deal to get out of the rock pile, and the difference between the rock pile and Rich Stadium was as big as the difference we're going to see between Rich Stadium and the next Highmark Stadium that will open in 2026. I'm fearful. I will be very honest with you. I'm very fearful about what is going to happen to the culture of the Bills in the Bills fan base, in the sense that now we're talking about PSLs. And I know that personal seat licenses, which are a very hot button discussion and will probably price some of the fan base out of their season tickets. And so I fear that the composition of the fan base may change. I hope it doesn't, but the stadium is going to be directed and appeal to people that may not be able to afford to go to some of these games. And so while I'm excited, at the same time, part of me is like, I don't know what's going to, what's it going to look like 10 years from now? What's the fan base going to look like 10 years from now? Is it going to be any different? I don't know.
Unfortunately, they were saying the current stadium, it would cost more to completely renovate it than it would to build the new stadium. And
Yeah.
I hear this from Bud Bailey when I'm down in Buffalo. They should have put a dome on it. How do you feel about it? Do you think there should have been a dome on it or open air better?
I think for economic purposes, a dome would have been better. Unfortunately, it was not within the reasonable price that the Bills or Western New York could even afford. But it would have been nice in the sense that so many other things could be brought into a multi-use facility in an open air stadium. But this one is like, I think, a pretty good compromise, don't you think, Chris, with the overhang that they're having and the design of it, in my mind, feels like it's almost going to be a dome stadium, but open. Like you have a dome stadium when they open it up. That's what I think the stadium will probably be like. And that will be different. Now, I wonder about the wind, right? I'm sure that the engineers have taken that all into consideration in terms of which way the prevailing winds come and how they can best protect the stadium and the fans from the wind and the elements. So it's going to be very interesting to see how it all turns out.
The last time the Buffalo Bills had grass field at home was 1972 at War Memorial Stadium. So they're going to have grass field for the first time in 54 years at the new stadium.
Whoa, I didn't know that. Wow. Wow. Yay. I think the players are going to like it a lot more.
Well, with today's technology, they can put a heater underneath the field, and in cold climate cities now can have grass field. So I think that's going to make a huge impact as well. But you brought up too, you're going to the real fans could get priced at the stadium. You're going to see more corporate people. But as you know, uh, speaking from Toronto at the Toronto Blue Jay games or the Maple Leaf
Oh,
games,
I can't.
the real fans don't. The real fans don't go to the home games in Toronto because they can't afford it. They go to all the road games, and it might be a different crowd in that new stadium in 2026, possibly.
It might be. And I've been to a lot of the other stadiums, and I can say that it's fun to go on the road with the Bills. So I could see a lot of Bills fans doing that. And we travel well.
My next, yes, I would say Buffalo's in the top five teams for traveling fan bases. I got Philadelphia, Buffalo, Green Bay, Pittsburgh,
Mhm.
and the San Francisco 49ers.
Yes.
As a, those are the five to me of the top five fan bases for traveling.
Pittsburgh for sure. We get them like yellow towels like crazy.
Absolutely. And before we wrap this show up, I do this with all my guests. Robyn, what is a fun fact about yourself and maybe about Bill's Mafia or your about? But yeah, let me reward it. What is a fun fact about yourself?
Fun fact about myself. Well, I'm crazy. I've been a crazy Bills fan for a really, really long time. Fun fact. Well, I don't know. That's a good question. How
Or even
about
about your podcast too?
how about that I was a founding member of the Bills Mafia when it was formed originally, when the
Wow.
whole yeah, the whole thing started. And that was like 10 years ago. And Del Reed, who's the head of 26 Shirts, and Leslie and Brayon came together, and Bill's Mafia was born. And then they were reaching out because they needed funds to get organized and get started. And so they offered this opportunity to become a founding member, and I did. So that's my fun fact. I'm a founding member of Bill's Mafia, and it's funny when I tell people here in Wyoming, everybody knows Bill's Mafia now, and it's still to this day amazes me how that just blew up on social media and became what it is. Great.
And what's the fun fact about the state of Wyoming? I've never been there.
My goodness, it's heaven on earth. It's a strange place. We're close to Yellowstone. We're probably about a 2-hour drive from Yellowstone National Park. And so we think about the super volcano that keeps burping every now and then and reminding us that we all should be humble because it could blow up at any moment. People in Wyoming, I will say this, you will find this interesting. The people in Wyoming, when I moved here, I felt like I moved home. There is a similarity between the fan bases, the people of Wyoming and the people of Western New York. It's been almost like a marriage made in heaven, because there are people from Buffalo now that come to Laramie every year to watch a game, and they have big parties and all this stuff going on. And I have to laugh because they're like, why don't you just come for a game? Well, it's a 300-mile drive from where I live. Wyoming is big. And it's like 7,200 feet above sea level in Laramie. So it's high altitude, crazy, which is another reason why Josh Allen was so happy to be able to play in Buffalo, because he knows how to play in bad weather. The people in Wyoming are very much like the people in Western New York, family oriented. And if you see somebody with a UW hat on or whatever when you're traveling, it's like same kind of thing, like go Pokes, same sort of thing. So I ended up in a place kind of like where I started, and that feels good.
All right. And we're going to finish this up with the last question. Robyn, where can my audience follow you on social
Okay.
media, your website, and again, when is your next Buffalo Bills blog on buffalofanbase.com?
Well, I'm going to probably be writing another article coming up. I've been thinking about writing something about the rookies that we have. Great show, Chris. You did an awesome job. Oh, gosh. T. She's not going to tell me that when we're off the air. So where was I going with that?
Your next blog?
My next blog probably will come out sometime this week. And it's www. Well, you don't have to do that. Buffalo Fam, and that's FAM like family, buffalofambase.com. And it's sponsored by 26 Shirts and Del Reed and Company, and they are just awesome people. And our podcast, Tea Time with Robyn, will drop on Thursday live, and probably we'll be doing every week now through the rest of the season. And we're at 11 a.m. Eastern time, and we would love to have you on the show sometime, Chris.
I'd love to come on and talk Philadelphia Eagles with you
Yes!
guys, or the Canadian Football League, or the National Lacrosse League. Yeah, I would, and that's the fun part. I've now been asked to come on other people's shows, and it's really nice when people think of me enough to ask me to come on their shows as well.
You're awesome.
And finally, I have one other website you guys have. You're on Linktree, Not Your Average Podcast.
Oh, yes, that's my friend T. She's like you. She does more than one podcast because she's really good at that. So, yeah, check out her.
I'm definitely going to have.
Go ahead.
Will do. I'll check out her work, and I'll definitely have her come on my show.
You should.
Sometime.
You should. She's a great guest.
And the best place for people to follow you is on Twitter X, I guess.
At Robyn Mundy YO. It's ROBYNMUNDYWYO. Hello, Chris.
We have a special guest here. Robbie Schneider's on.
Hi, Robbie.
716 Sports Blizzard podcast. Check it out. It's on YouTube.
Awesome.
And Robbie just had a couple of shows recently. I think it was Joe Miller. And I can't believe he had another guest.
Bill.
Okay.
Brother Bill. Awesome.
Yeah, Brother Bill, barber out of Rochester.
Yes.
So, yeah. So thank you, Robbie, for coming on. And that's how I met you, through Robbie's podcast, because I saw you on his show. So that's how I met you, through his show.
That's awesome. And Robbie is just going to fly with this thing this year. He's just an awesome guy, and I love him.
Absolutely. And again, Robyn, I want to say I apologize for keeping you over an hour, but I really thought we had great conversation and covered a lot. And do you have any final thoughts before I wrap this up?
I just want to thank you, and I wish you all the best. We have a big season coming up, and I'm sure that your show is just going to continue to grow as you have. And I just can't tell you how grateful I am that that you allowed me to come on your show.
Well, and thank you for coming on my show. And I just reach out to people, and sometimes they say no or they can't, and a lot of times they can. And I love storytelling aspect of it and connecting with people. And even though I'm a Philadelphia Eagles fan, I have a soft spot in my heart for the city of Buffalo. It's like my second home. And if I can get a radio job in Buffalo, New York, I would be happy to
We would
move
love it.
there because I love the area. It doesn't feel like I'm away from Canada when I'm in Western New York.
Don't they say that Buffalo's a suburb of Canada?
It's sort of like an extension of Canada.
Mm-hmm.
So, but Robbie's saying, "Hey, you guys, I love you both." Thank you, Robbie.
Thank you, Robbie. Love you too.
And Robbie's also a fan of the Canadian Football League, Toronto Argonauts.
Argos.
Yes,
All
yes,
right.
yes. So, and if you ever want to learn anything about the CFL, just come in and ask me, and I'd be happy
I
to
will.
talk to you about our league as well. So,
I will.
all right. All right. Thank you so much for coming on here today, and give me a little bit of time this afternoon, and I will send you the video and the audio. And I've learned how to edit video, so I'm going to make about 4 or 5 video clips if you'd like to share on your social media as
I
well
would
as
love
your
to.
podcast.
Thank you. Thank you very
And
much.
again,
Appreciate it.
again, Tea Time with Robyn returns this Thursday, July 18th at 11 a.m.
That's correct. Eastern time.
Okay, I'm going to make sure I tune in at 11 o'clock in the morning, and I'll make sure I comment on your comment section.
Thank you. That would be so nice. We would love to have you.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Robyn. Have a great day. And as Jim Kelly would always say, go Bills.
Go Bills. Peace out.
Thanks, Robyn. You too. Take care. All right, guys. I hope you enjoyed Season 8, Episode 30 today with my guest, Robyn Mundy, the editor-in-chief of BuffaloFanBase.com, a widely read blog for the Buffalo Bills fan base. And she's a host of her own podcast show, her and Tiffany. The show's called Tea Time with Robyn. Her podcast is on every Thursday at 11 a.m. And they're going to be talking about the 2024 Buffalo Bills. So if you're a huge Bills Mafia fan, a fan of the Buffalo Bills, check out Tea Time with Robyn this Thursday morning at 11 a.m. on all social media platforms, including their YouTube channel as well. My next live with CDP Sports and Entertainment Talk Show, sponsored by BarryCullin.com, to be announced for next week. I'm working on more guests. Also, guys, tomorrow night, Wednesday, July 17th at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, Episode 6 of the Argo Bounce live audio show with Nick Small and myself returns. We have a special guest named Rick, who's from Hamilton. He's a season ticket holder and has his own podcast show focused on the Hamilton Tiger Cats. Rick, our guest, is going to come on and talk about the 0-5 Tiger Cats, and we're going to preview the game between the Argonauts and the Tiger Cats this Saturday night at Tim Hortons Fields in Hamilton, 7 o'clock kickoff there. And Nick and I are going to break down the Argos' impressive 37-18 upset win over the defending Grey Cup champion Montreal Alouettes this past Thursday night in Montreal as well. So Argo Bounce live audio show tomorrow night, 8:30 on all major social media platforms. Please tune in. Also, guys, if you're looking for your forever furry friend, check out the Cambridge and District Humane Society at 1650 Dunbar Road in Cambridge, Ontario, 519-623-7722, and check out their website, CambridgeHumaneSociety.org. All the pets that are up for adoption, their information is on CambridgeHumaneSociety.org. As always, guys, Live with CDP Sports and Entertainment Talk Show is hosted by yours truly, Chris Pommier, is on weeknights from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern on WQEE 99.1 FM, The Key, the home of Southern sports and talk, the heartbeat of Atlanta. Our radio station's website is WQEEFM.radio12345.com. Live with CDP Sports and Entertainment Talk Show is live streamed on these platforms: YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, X, Twitch, LinkedIn, and available on Instagram. And I apologize today, guys. I found out last night I can no longer live stream on Twitter X unless you have a premium account. And I did get a premium account this morning with Twitter X. So I'm hoping for my next live with CDP Sports Talk and Entertainment show and the Argo Bounce show, it will be back on tomorrow night on Twitter X as well. Just to warn people live streaming there now, you have to get their premium program off of X. Also, guys, you can check out my website at beacons.ai/Chris D. Palme. Again, live with CDP Sports and Entertainment Talk Show is sponsored by Barry Cullen Chevrolet Dealership at 905 Woodlawn Road West in the Qualfano Mall. Check out BarryCullen.com for the selection of new and pre-owned GM vehicles, or give them a call at 519-824-0210, or email them at info@barrycullen.com. Speaking of Barry Cullen Chevrolet right now, try out their first ever all-electric Blazer EV, 4.99% financing for up to 60 months. Get up to $5,000 in government rebates. More details at barrycullen.com. You guys can also follow this content creator on TikTok at Live with CDP. StreamYard is the official live stream provider of Live with CDP Sports and Entertainment Talk Show. If you're into webinars or podcasting, check out StreamYard.com. Live with CDP Sports and Entertainment podcast. The audio version is available on these platforms: iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Spotify for podcasters, Apple Podcasts, Breaker, Pocket Castbox, LinkedIn, Pandora, Tuned In, and now available on YouTube Music. So when you go to the YouTube Music app, click in Live with CDP Sports Talk and hit that subscribe notification. And finally, you guys can email or text Live with CDP Sports and Entertainment Talk Show at cpalme19@gmail.com, or text the show at 519-820-7188. Any comments, questions, suggestions, feedback would be greatly appreciated. And again, I want to say thank you to my guest today, Robyn Mundy, the editor-in-chief for BuffaloFanBase.com and the host of the podcast show called which airs every Thursday at 11 a.m. on YouTube and all these social media platforms, for coming on today. And I want to say thank you everyone watching on live stream, and I hope to be live streaming on X very soon. And thank you to everyone listening to this on audio platforms, and to WQEE 99.1 FM for airing my show every night, Monday to Friday from 8 to 9 p.m. Eastern, and to Barry Cullen Chevrolet for sponsoring. Thank you, everybody, for watching and listening to Live with CDP Sports and Entertainment Talk Show. I will be back very soon. I will make an announcement on my social media pages. And again, the Argo Bounce Live audio show tomorrow night, Wednesday, July 17th at 8:30 p.m. with co-host Nick Small and myself, and we're going to talk Argonauts football and preview their upcoming game against the Hamilton Tiger Cats this Saturday night. Have a great afternoon, everybody, and again, thanks for watching and listening to Live with CDP Sports and Entertainment.